Our guest for tonight is a very, very special person, and he's already there with us. So I'm going to pin this person and let me quickly introduce him. So he is a leadership coach, and he is somebody who's been working on the most sought after skill in the industry these days. And what better to have and hear live from him uh, about leadership skills. So I said, let us start, the first and the first interview of this entire season with him. And for some of you who might not know, Sudhindra is also my accountability partner. So let me just take Sudhindra on spotlight. Hello and welcome, Sudhindra.
Thank you, Rachna. Thanks a lot. I'm really grateful to you for the invite, and especially so because, as just mentioned, I'm the first in the series. Really, privileged. Thank you.
Great. Just okay. So, I would like each one of you present here to type "Welcome Sudhindra" in the chat, and let's, on behalf of this community, welcome him to our Inner Circle Mastermind call. So I have just shared a brief about Sudhindra, but Sudhindra, I would want you to share a bit about your professional journey.
Okay. So, Rachna, I'm an engineer by qualification, and I got into an engineering job for 2 years, and then, like all the people of my generation did, the engineers of my generation, I jumped into IT and I stayed there for a good 22 years. And in IT, I played all kinds of roles, and I worked in different parts of the world, different industries, and I've managed teams from very small to all the way up to 200. So I always say that probably there is no mistake as far as leadership and management is concerned that I haven't made. So that's how I decided to quit my job 2 years ago, and I've been a leadership coach now. So yeah, that's been me.
Wow. So 20 long years. Was it with the one company or you?
I switched companies, but the last 16 years I was with Zensar. Zensar Technologies is an IT company in India. So I was there. I was traveling to different parts of the world, but I was working with one company.
Wow, that's a pretty long time because,
Yes.
In my interaction, I see a lot of people switching jobs really, really fast these days.
Yes.
So, sticking such a long time in one organization, how was your experience?
Uh, See, 16 years may seem a long time, but if I break it down, it would seem much more reasonable because the first 5 years we lived in South Africa. So, I was over there and I didn't have anything to do with, the organization here. Then, even after I came back on and off, I was always working at different locations, whether it was in Mumbai or United States or Europe. So, I was working in different places. So, I got new opportunities within the organization across organization. It's a large organization. So therefore, it wasn't really difficult for me to just stay on in the same organization. I really didn't have the monotonicity problem that people would generally have in the same place. So that's why it worked for me.
So after being in corporate job and now being a coach and helping out people, what made you, come into this field and, switch from a well-paying corporate job and come into this area?
Yep. So good question, Rachna. Many people ask me that. A cushy job in the corporate world, especially in IT, and we all know how well IT pays. So I always wanted to do something different, and for a good 2 decades, I thought that I need to take care of my financial stability and just keep doing things to keep the show going. But soon I realized that I wanted to do a lot more in life. I wanted to make a bigger difference, and just by doing a corporate job like everyone else, I wouldn't be able to make that kind of a difference. I did have, in fact, I should have moved out a lot earlier, but I couldn't because I always had that fear of failure. Because I thought that if I jump out, try and do something else, then I might fail, and then what will happen, and things like that. But then soon it turned into fear of regret. So what I mean by that is, I just sat back and thought, if I fast forward in time and reach the age of 60, and then think back and, what, in my mid 40s or early 40s, I had this opportunity to do something else and I didn't do it, then the regret that I would have at that time would be terrible. So I thought, now is the time. Let me take the plunge and let me just do it. So that's how I got into this. And I've always had a background in teaching. So even though I've been in the corporate world, still teaching has always been my first love. I was working as a volunteer in a school. I've been working it as a volunteer in a school for over 12 years now. And I'm a co-founder of Pune's largest, not Pune, India's largest running community called Pune Running. And there I've been a trainer. I've been teaching thousands of people how to run. So teaching has always been something which is very dear to me. So it was a natural transition for me to, quit my job and get into something like this.
Wow. Then I think you can give us, other than leadership skill tips, you can also help help us with health tips.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So coming to my first question, I've heard this quote a lot of times. People say that leaders are born, they are not made. What is your thought on this? And can leadership skills be developed?
Okay. So I think it's a complete myth that leaders are born and not developed. I think it's the other way around. That is, leaders are developed and not born. What I mean by that is, if you break down leadership skills into specific things, then all of those items can be inculcated. All of those can be one can be made aware of, and then one can start developing those skills. There might be a little bit of genetics here, meaning there might be a few people who may have some kind of genetics in them, because of which genetical making in them, because of which they have a slight advantage. But if you ask me, most of it is developed. Just a little bit, maybe it is inborn. But yeah, for me, I don't believe that leaders are born. They're made, most of them.
Okay. So within the organization, most of the time people have this misconception that if I am leading a team, only if I have reached that position where I'm leading a team, I'm a team leader, that is only where I need this particular skill. So, what is your thought? If somebody is an individual contributor, is this skill
Mhm.
important for that person?
Yes. So let me tell you, it's actually even worse than that. Many people think that leadership skills are only required for people who are at the top. That is the CEO, CIO, CFO, the CXO level, or maybe just one level below them. But my firm belief is that leadership is required at every level of the organization, right down to the individual contributor. And individual contributors should definitely start working on their leadership skills, because it sets the tone, it sets the foundation, so that when they get into managerial positions, when they have people working with them, they will already be there. And the other important thing that I like to make here is that there is something called as self leadership. So leadership, leading others, is one thing, but before that comes self leadership, and that is something which one can learn irrespective of what one's position is.
So true, so true. So is leadership an art or a science?
For me, it is, again, it's a science with a little bit of art too. So I'd say 90% science and 10% art. Some of I mean, art. When I say art, it is mostly abstract and something that can't be explained. For example, something like intuition. But 90% of it is science. So science is where it is a process, it is a repeatable process, and it can be explained. So I think it is 90% science and 10% art.
Okay. My next question to you is a very common one, but often, this question comes to mind many a times when people are working within an organization, and they always want to ask, what is the difference between a manager or a boss and a leader?
Okay. Um, there is a very simple definition. A manager is one who is identified or defined by a designation. So in organizations, you'll have project manager, program manager, delivery manager, portfolio manager, HR manager, accounts manager, purchase manager, this manager, that manager. So it's a designation that the organization has given to the person. Whereas a leader is defined by the actions that he or she takes, the kind of actions, and whether people think of that as respectful and whether people are admiring of that person. So a manager may have the designation, but if he or she doesn't demonstrate the leadership skills, then he or she is just a manager but not a leader. Whereas an individual contributor, and some of your people could be individual contributors here, for them this is relevant, is you may not have the designation of a leader, but if people are listening to you and if people respect you and listen and agree with, or rather follow you, then you're definitely a leader already without having the designation of a manager yet. That is the biggest difference as far as I am concerned. Manager is designation, leader is by action.
So rightly said. I heard somewhere that a manager or a boss will only, take work out of you or make you do the task. However, if you are a part of a team which is led by a leader, he will be somebody who's actually nurturing your talent, and he would be bringing out your 100% in terms of what is expected.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, as a team player, you wouldn't know what is your contribution or how much you can contribute. But if you have a good leader managing you, then he will automatically take that out from within.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
So if an organization has a good leadership, I would say, then how can this person bring about a sustainable and positive change within the team?
Yeah. So first of all, um, a good leader. So what is a good leader? Okay. So as a little while ago, I mentioned something called as self leadership. So there are a few things that a person has to do, whether he is an individual contributor or a manager. And if that person does those things, then it will be well taken. It will be the person will be well respected. So, for example, that person has to have high integrity. So when I say high integrity, it means what do you do when no one is looking at you, even when no one is looking at you. Okay, so that is an indication of a person who has high integrity, because people don't listen to what you say, people look at what you do and then they follow you. It's a bit like parenting as well, right? So in parenting, our children may hear what we say, but they don't really absorb what we say. They absorb what we do. So similarly, as a leader, what you do is what your team and the people who are working around with you are going to judge you by. And second is being self-aware. So as a leader, you should be knowing about your strengths and your weaknesses as well. So you should be and you needn't be insecure about it. You can even be open about it. The next thing is taking ownership. So there's a nice line: as a leader, you should always give a little more credit than people deserve, and when things go well, and when things go wrong, you should take a little more blame than what you deserve. So if you can demonstrate these things, and then also be reliable and have be self disciplined, then people will then you are ticking all the boxes as far as self leadership is concerned. And so people will naturally start admiring you, people will naturally start following you. Then apart from that, there are some next level skills which one has to develop to be able to lead others, like negotiation skills, emotional intelligence, delegation, communication skills, dealing with office politics, so many of the other things. So if you have all these traits and you set the right kind of culture within your group, within your team, or within your organization, whatever you're leading, then the people who are working with you are going to be very you and will always remember that they have that always remember the time they've had working with you.
Wow. So you've actually, in such a brief explained the major qualities of a leader.
Yeah.
So is there any similarity between leading and coaching? Or I would say, is coaching the team members also a part of leadership?
Definitely, yes. It is a very important element of leadership. So let me put it this way. So to begin with, anyone becomes a leader or rather a manager because of the position that they have. Okay. And then people start respecting you once you start developing a good relationship. Okay. So if you and I have a good, a healthy relationship where I'm respectful towards you, then you start, then you start respecting me a lot more. Then the next step is for me to deliver results. So what I mean by results is if we are working in a certain team or a certain department, then our department has to be successful. So that is one part, the organization results. Then also I should start getting results for the individuals. So the individual performers, they have their own goals, they have their own aspirations. So they may be looking forward to awards, increments, promotions, new opportunities, whatever. So if I start getting those kind of results, more as a leader. And then the most important thing is I should start creating new leaders. Okay, so what I mean by, and that is where coaching comes in. So I've done a fantastic job, but now I've started replicating it. I'm starting to create people who also have the same traits or who are going to go along the same successful path. That is when a truly great leader emerges, and that is why coaching is a very important aspect of leadership. However, let me tell you that people will not be happy to be coached by someone who is himself or herself not a successful leader. So one has to have the body of work or the the list of successes for people in front of you or your team members to be coached by you.
Right, absolutely. So a true leader also, creates his own clones.
Yes.
It will, and often,
Yeah.
that is missing in the organizations because even though people are, good at leading teams, but when it comes to delegating or creating leaders like them, often that insecurity is there within them.
Yes. Good leaders bring in good results. Great leaders create new leaders.
Wow, beautiful. So, if you had to share, Sudhindra, few tips with our listeners, our community members, as to how they can sharpen their leadership skills, any tips for them?
Yeah. So first of all, don't think of leadership as something which is a myth or something which is beyond me or something which is not for everyone. Leadership skills are required for each and every person, and you have to work on it. And the second thing is start slow. So start by first reading up, trying to understand what leadership skills are, and start working on it. And like I spoke a little while ago, start with self leadership. So things like self discipline, self awareness, taking ownership, these are things which you don't have to wait for anyone to tell you. Start doing those things, and then you will be on your path to learning deeper and deeper things about leadership. But the most important thing is that leadership is something which is not a fashion. So whether it is today or 6 months ago or 100 years ago or 6 months from now or 100 years from now, leadership skills will always be relevant. So keep in mind that this is one skill which was not going to be outdated at all, because as long as human beings exist, leadership skills will be relevant. So therefore, start working on your leadership skills right now, and there is and you will it will definitely help you. And let me add here that in today's world, if we are working with human beings, there is no one, no job, no role, no position, no situation where leadership skills are not relevant. It will always be relevant. So keep learning, and you will definitely get better. But don't think of it as something which is not for me. It is needed, and it is needed for everyone.
Those are really useful tips. So one last question, because we have a lot of millennials in our community and people who are just starting off their profession careers, and still maybe to get into a job. So how this skill can be, or can this skill be useful to them uh, in the career acceleration or in job search, or somebody who's just started the journey?
Yes, yes, absolutely. It will be very useful for them. So wherever they are working, just taking ownership of doing the work, that itself is an important skill, and it will stand you in good stead. And when you go for job interviews, people can see through you. They will. Some of the questions may be very innocuous, may seem very harmless, but people are testing for your potential skills. And if you are a new, if you are a junior employee or whatever, sometimes one may think that there are not enough opportunities. I'll get opportunities to lead people only later, but that's not necessarily the case. One can go and volunteer in an organization, and just take on some responsibility, even if it is a small responsibility. And if you take it to a logical end, then that could test and develop your leadership skills. And in fact, I tell many people that never say that you don't get opportunities. Social organizations are always waiting for people who can come and contribute. And I'll tell you something very important is that in social organizations, your leadership skills will really be developed, because what I've seen is that in the corporate world, it is easier to implement or learn leadership skills, because there people are paid to work under you, and they better listen to you. They don't have a choice. Whereas in social organizations, people don't have people have all the choice. They can just walk away. So your skills will really be developed, because you will have to motivate and get work done from people who can say no on the face to you. So that is why I say that keep an eye for opportunities from within the organization if possible, and even if that's not possible, look for opportunities from outside the organization as well. But definitely work on your leadership skills. And trust me, I've done interviews of hundreds of people during my career, and I always look for leadership skills. So the question may not be about do you have leadership skills, but some subtle questions, and then the answers that you give will reflect whether you have it in you or not.
Wow, that's powerful. If you all found that powerful, type powerful in the chat. So since you said, you ask questions, just probe into the interviews and find out whether this person has the leadership skills or not. Would you want to give some hints to our viewers?
Yeah. So, for example, if you know, if I would ask a question like, okay, what was the most difficult challenge that you encountered in your job, and how did you deal with it? So, if the so that's a common question, right? In any interview, I'm sure most people come prepared for it, but I look for the answer, and people will have stories, and I expect them to have the stories. I look at how they narrate the stories. Is it all about me, and how everyone else around me was useless? How appreciative are they of the people who have been supporting them, and how focused are they about solving the problem, and are they blaming others for having created the problem in the first place? Is that did that person and I asked follow-up questions like, how did you feel when that situation happened? So are they panicking? Did they hate the situation, or did the person look at it as an opportunity to lead? How did I and I also ask about what happened thereafter. So if the person says, I got an award, I got this, I got that, then you know where this is going. Whereas if the person says that, then we had a team meeting and we discussed the lessons learned, then I ask, okay, what happened during that meeting? So the person talks about not just his or her contribution, that is expected, that's going to happen, but also talks about how others contributed, how he or she could get others to do the work, or appreciates others. That is a reflection of whether that person has leadership skills or not for me.
Wow, that was really insightful, Sudhi. Now, you just mentioned, this is a little out of context question, a question rather, I say, I know you are too good at storytelling. So, and you just mentioned about, the correlation between leadership and parenting. So, would you want to share any story with us and maybe end the session with a powerful story with a lesson for our viewers?
Um, yes. So, okay, parenting and leadership. Okay. So, um, you know, there is this thing I've always had, that when I see in the mornings, and when I go out for a run in the mornings, I see parents and their kids. Not nowadays, because we are in a different situation altogether. The world is in a different situation altogether. So you have these kids, getting ready to climb the bus, and then the parents are also there. And you most of the times you will find that the parent is carrying the bag and the water bottle, and sometimes even trying to force feed the kid, and the kid is merrily walking away or playing, or just a grumpy face, whatever it is. So this is, I think, very symbolic, because what i what I have done is that, in my case, I have a daughter who's now 18 plus, and I have never carried her back, even when she was a toddler. Okay, I've never carried her back. When once or rather once she got into junior KG and things like that, never carried her back. It was always her. So in a way, it is in my way of teaching her responsibility, teaching her that whatever belongs to you is your responsibility. It's safety, carrying it, and if you think it's too heavy for you, deal with it. And I speak to parents about this many times, and then they give excuses like, it's too heavy, or the kid is not well, and things like that. I say to them, if the kid is not well, then maybe the kid should be sitting at home and not going to school. So what I feel is that if kids are taught to take responsibility for their things right from childhood, then it'll reflect in adult life as well. Because when you go to organizations, or when you start working in teams, you will see a lot of people who are who blame everyone and everything else for their problems. It's never themselves. Okay, there is no inward looking. They don't take responsibility for their actions, and even if there are some mistakes that they have made, or even if they have to take ownership, it's always they try to brush it off. I think these are kids whose parents probably carried their bags in their childhoods. So that is one thing that I always connect between parenthood and leadership.
Awesome, awesome. Very interesting way of connecting parenting, and a great message for all of us here. So, thank you so much on behalf of each one of us here in the call today and the entire community. I would want to thank Sudhindra for coming here, taking out his time, and being a part and sharing such interesting and useful insights. So, if you all found it useful, just thank Sudhindra, say thank you, Sudhi, in the chat. And Sudhi, thank you so much once again for being here today. And we look forward to many more such interactions and learnings with you.
Thank you, Rachna, and thank you to all your community members. I'm really grateful to you for listening to